Molly, don't be a pest. Get over here.
Okay, so we'll be starting with the early years, 1917 to basically 1930. Where were you born?
South Boston. And in fact, if you're going to write a book about it, I think a Southie lad or something, a Southie boy or something, because that's what everybody called South Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you come from? Southie. You know, I'm a Southie.
Okay. Do you not remember, but do you know the hospital? The hospital?
It would be the county hospital, unless it was done at home. It probably was done at home.
Okay.
I mean, in those days, most of them were done at home.
Uh-huh.
And I was a 15-pound baby.
15 pounds?
Yes, both my brother and I were 15 pounds.
Wow.
That's a hell of a big birth. Huh?
Yeah.
But of course, my mother was a big woman.
But do you think you went longer than 9 months, or?
Oh no.
Pretty much
It
9
probably
months.
was the regular
Yeah.
birthday length, whatever.
Where were you baptized?
Where was I baptized? It would have to be at the Gate of Heaven. Wait a minute. Now, let me see.
Okay, so we were talking about where you were. It was Gate of Heaven,
Gate of Heaven, yeah.
and that's in South Boston.
So, yeah. Fine.
What kind of baby were you? How do others remember you?
Go! Well, I was a big baby. I mean, I weighed 15 pounds.
Uh-huh.
So did my brother. And, I don't know, normal.
You know, like my mom says that I didn't ever cry when I was a baby. You know,
I don't think I was a problem in any manner, shape, or form. I was just a normal kid.
okay.
Except that I was a very beautiful baby, and I was a very handsome boy.
Okay.
And my two sisters, Marion and Doris, used to take me out walking when I was like, maybe 4 or 5. And they'd be walking me around South Boston. And when they'd see their friends walking with their smaller brother or sisters, they would pull their shit and say, now June, I was a junior. So they called me June, Jun, or Judy. For maybe 15 or more years. People called me Junie.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, but they would say, Judy, give the little girl a kiss. So I'd have to go up and give her a kiss and go around the house every time I met one of their friends that were with their sister, little sisters. I had to give them a kiss. And maybe that's what made me the way I am. I do so love women.
Do you have any real early memories between your birth and like 5 years old? Anything that sticks
Well,
out?
just being taken out by my sisters. They used to walk me around, and I was petrified with fire engines, because in those days they weren't automobiles, what do they call them?
Fire.
Fire engines. They were horse-drawn. And I used to like to go to the fire stations,
Mm-hmm.
and they had the harness hanging down. And as soon as the bell started to ring for an alarm, the horses knew what they were supposed to do, and they almost needed no direction. They would go where the harness was hanging, they'd drop that harness on them, and they were out like in a matter of minutes.
But did you say you were petrified of them?
Oh, yeah, as a little kid.
Yeah.
Little kid, because they were, they were big horses.
Mm-hmm.
And when they ran with these feet, these horseshoes, there was sparks coming out of the ground and everything else,
Wow. Yeah.
And the clanging of the
bell.
bells, the alarms, they were going through the street. So it was quite well, you've seen them in the movies.
Yeah.
I mean, they were usually two horses, or maybe one horse, I've forgotten whether one or two, but, and they were quite effective, or whatever you want to call it. It's quite a sight.
Mm-hmm. As a toddler, can you remember anything that brought you joy?
Huh?
As a toddler, can you remember anything that brought you joy?
But
Like things that made you happy as a little guy?
no, I can't think of anything.
You-
Especially,
You had two sisters, Mary and Doris, and one brother, Edward.
yeah.
And you had another older brother?
Yeah. Oh, the hair was on my face.
Oh.
Yeah.
And- I'm sorry?
Edward.
Edward. And did you have another brother that your mother lost?
No, she had a daughter. Her first child died in Kansas. That's where she went with her husband to Kansas, and was there when they had the baby. I forgot what the hell her name was. You can name any name, But she went there with my father because his father lived in Kansas. His father was actually the mayor of Liberal, Kansas.
Oh, Liberal, Kansas.
And they went there because, according to my mother, my father said, he was working on the railroad there. And on top of that, his father was he was the mayor of Liberal, Kansas. Also, he had a farm. He owned a hotel there and so forth. So they lived there, my mother and father, absolutely free. The old man had houses. He owned houses that he rented. He had farms that there were farms and houses and so forth. He owned a hotel there in Liberal, Kansas. He owned the ice house. He had farms so that they didn't have to pay for anything. They lived free and clear while my father was working on the railroad there. So they had actually no expenses. Put the money in the bank, But my mother got homesick for Boston, actually. Well, you could say South Boston, but either you say South Boston or Boston. She wanted to come back home. So my father told his father that he was going back home to Boston. And the old man, my grandfather, his name was John. He was the mayor of Liberal, Kansas. And he told my father that if he moves to Boston, don't ever call on me for anything. And he had money. He owned a hotel and all that sort of shit. And like he was the mayor, big shop in Liberal, Kansas, and all that kind of stuff. He told my father, don't ever call on me for anything. And during the Depression, my father did. He was working on the railroad, but the railroad went on strike. It was a big strike and a long strike. And he wrote my grandfather asking for some money to help him out. And the old man said, tough shit. I told you, don't ever ask me for anything. If you'll leave Liberal, Kansas and go to Boston to live, that's it. And he meant it. Never gave him a dime.
So would Edward, Doris, and Marion also be born in South Boston?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Is Gate of Heaven the one of the most important churches in South Boston?
It was a big church, but they were all, South Boston had, in fact, you could find out how many churches were in 1917. You can find out from calling a church there, why you want to know it and so forth. They'll tell you how many churches, but shit, it seemed like there was a church on every third corner in Southie. In fact, there were more young men sent to the priesthood from South Boston than any city in the country. That's what I was told. Because it was all almost predominantly Catholic. There was Italian, there was Lithuanian, Polish, Irish, mostly Irish, and so forth in Southie. And it was strictly a Catholic church, city.
What is the range of your siblings? Is Edward the oldest? Marion's?
Well, because the first one died. I don't know what her name was. You could use any name. Ed was the oldest. Marion was the next one. Wilma, then me, and then Doris. Is that the telephone?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. It might,
Did an older sister take care of you more than the others?
Two of them. They were so close, there was only a couple of years difference between all of us. Well, yeah, I think so. No, my brother Ed was about 7 years older than me. But then what do we have? Marion, Wilma, Edward, Marion, Wilma, and then me. And there was probably, there was 7 years difference between me and Edward. Edward was the oldest. So that's the spacing in the between these kids.
And Doris is the youngest.
The youngest.
So was it really Marion and Wilma who would take you
Oh
around?
yeah, yeah.
Do you remember the potty training process?
No,
No.
no, I don't remember any of that shit.
They would have had flush toilets.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, there's stuff. You don't have to include this in your story, but where we lived in South Boston, the toilets were one on top of the other. You know, you went from 1 to 3 floors sometimes. When my mother was in the bathroom, going to the bathroom, and I was out in the kitchen, like, whatever the hell, I was just a little kid. And she called out to me. She said, "What are you doing, honey?" And there was a little kid underneath, you know, another floor down, I heard her. And he says, "I'm shitting, honey. What are you doing?" Oh, shit. "I'm shitting, honey. What are you doing?"
What was your mother's maiden name?
Emily Purcell.
Purcell?
Purcell. P-U-C-E-L-L.
P-U-R?
P-U-R. Purcell.
Okay. Where was she born?
Oh, in South Boston.
And probably baptized there as well. And,
Yeah. I don't know what church, because I don't know where the hell she was living. My grandfather died. I never saw him. He died when her children, my grandmother's children, like my mother and uncles, were children, small children. And she raised her children, my mother and her siblings, by working in the, cleaning office buildings, in the office. Like working nights, you know. Daytime she was taking care of the kids.
So she would put you guys off to she would put the kids to sleep and then go to work, kind of thing?
Oh, yeah.
Do you recall any stories that your mom said of her as a
her
young
mother?
girl? Yeah.
Oh. Well,